Hello everyone, and welcome back to michaelglass.com, our YouTube channel at Move Up with Mike. And today we're going to talk a little bit about order flow. So before we begin, we always like to start off with a little bit of our disclosures, and so let's get right to it. Any trading that you see today or any advice you see today is purely for educational purposes. Whether you're trading stocks, forex, futures, options, they all have a level of risk. You can lose your money. Any charts that you see today, again, are for educational purposes. So any decision you make is solely your own responsibility. Trade at your own risk. So again, today we're going to talk about what is order flow. What is order flow? And I think our matrix graph here is very applicable, because when I first started looking at order flow, that's all it looked to me. It looked like jibbly-juke, just a bunch of numbers, And to be honest with you, I remember I started looking at Day Trader and all those numbers, and I looked at it for, they had the trial, a month or something like that. And then I emailed back and said, nah, forget it. Because to me, it was just a bunch of numbers. But if you remember the movie Matrix, at the very end, he initially was going to run away from the agents, and he stopped and he turned. He was like, no. And all the following green numbers there turned into the shape of the agents. And if you put in the time with order flow, the same thing can happen with you. All these numbers start to slow down, and you start to recognize patterns. You start to recognize what's going on in the auction process, and you can get into the opportunity flow. So hopefully, as you begin your quest to understand order flow, you understand that in the beginning it can look like jibbly-juke, but at the end you can gain a better understanding of what the market is trying to do. And so I have this little quote here that says, I equate ego with trying to figure out everything out instead of going with the flow. And I think that's where a lot of traders go wrong. And I think that's what order flow is so great, is that you just have to go with the flow. I don't want to sound like, some 70s guy, but, just go with the flow and recognize what the market is trying to do and how you can take advantage of that. And it's those traders, because this quote goes on to say, when you do this, when you focus on trying to figure out everything instead of going with the flow, it closes your heart and mind to the person or situation that's right in front of you. In other words, as far as traders, when you're so busy trying to be right, you close yourself off to other opportunities and what the market's really trying to do, and you're focusing on what you want the market to do. And we all know the market could really care less what any of us want it to do. So when I think about a general definition of what order flow is, it's basically what the interaction of buyers and sellers that causes the price to move. And this is a process. It's a discovery process. The price is moving up and down, trying to find balance, trying to find value. And we're going to do another video that you really should look at both of these at the same time. Order flow, market profile, auction theory. They're all intertwined, but this video is just focused on order flow. But we are going to touch in some market profile principles. And yes, there is an auction process. There's a process of price moving up and down with the buyers and sellers trying to find value, trying to find balance. And it's our job to look at that order flow and try to interpret what those buy and sell orders, the transactions, what do they mean? Back in the day, this is really labeled as price action and reading the tape. But when Market Delta came around with their footprint chart and some other traders, it really changed over to order flow. And so what you have to decide as you're going through this process of becoming a better trader is, how are you going to plot these transactions? Again, how are we going to find value? Old school support and resistance, but really it's all about the market being in balance and out of balance, how we're trying to find value. And so when we talk about plotting these transactions, we're talking about a chart. And so let's look at some traditional charts. Back in the day, I traded for years with the candlestick charts, Heiken SG charts, Renko charts, Renko charts. There's all these charts, and they're good, and there's still volume with them. Now, I still have some charts on some side computers with some of these traditional charts. But the thing that these things don't tell you is, why the price stop here? Why the price stop up there? I don't know. But when you have the opportunity to actually look inside the numbers, you can see that. Now, as I said, when I first moved over to day trader and started looking at the dome more, to me, this was just all numbers. Now I am able to look at it better and get a better idea of what's going on. And actually, there are trades just by looking at the numbers. But this was not enough for me. So I actually had to skip over this and go over to, as we talked about, Market Delta. Now, I don't use Market Delta, but Market Delta, you can really give them credit for popularizing the idea of a footprint chart. Now, I use Sierra chart, so I use number bars. But again, you gotta get credit where credit's due. And if you'll notice though, you really do have candles here, based upon whatever time frame you're looking for. The difference is between this and this is that there's these numbers that allow us to see inside the candle. And why the price stop here? Well, you can see the absorption going on here. And we'll talk more about what do you mean absorption. We're going to talk about that in a second. But again, as we talk about order flow, typically you're going to see traders using one of these two, because even people using the dome, your traditional dome, talk about the order flow. But more often than not, you're going to see people using footprint charts, number bars charts, something that has the numbers inside the candles versus just a typical candlestick chart. And again, the reason being is you can still get the shapes. So if you still want to do inside bars, bullish, bearish engulfing candles, great, fine. You can still do that. I can still see here's a bearish engulfing candle right there, great. But the difference is you can see the numbers as it's going on and determine, when we see absorption or when it's a weak push through, not a lot of transaction, and so therefore it could be a head fake. Well, we could see a head fake if we can see that there's not really a lot of sellers going through it and they're just running stops. That is why, again, we typically use a footprint chart instead of a typical chart. So some words, terminology that people you're going to hear who are typically involved in order flow, obviously price, buyers, sellers, volume. People in order flow look at volume a little bit differently than you might traditionally see on a traditional chart. We'll talk about that. Again, we are going to do a video on market profile, but right now we're just talking about order flow. But still, even in order flow, there is an auction process, that price discovery of trying to stay in balance value, or are we out of balance? Imbalance. People, especially when we're talking about reversals, or we're going to talk about Iceberg and Absorption and Exhaustion. And so we're going to talk about all three of those briefly, but I would recommend that you definitely take a look at that, especially when we're talking about reversals, support and resistance in the traditional sense. But again, in order flow, market profile, they don't really talk about support and resistance. They talk about value and being in balance, imbalance. And finally, imbalance. Now, this is a separate. In order flow, imbalance is a little bit different because it has to do, again, since we're looking inside the candle, it has to do with the volume, the transactions at a certain price. And again, we'll explain that too. So I'm looking at the time and seeing that we are already at 10 minutes, and I'm sure some of you are, your mind's like exploding with all this information. So what I want to do is make this into a playlist. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make different videos about each of these areas in the terms of the terminology of order flow. So you can go to the area that you maybe already have some basic information and you don't need all of this. So you can go deep dive into where you want to go to. We hope that you found this as a good introductory video to what order flow is so that you can begin to use it to make yourself a better trader. In essence, order flow is all about areas of value. The market is either balanced or an imbalance. And what we as traders use order flow to do is it allows us to stay in tune with what the market is doing at this minute, at this second. And it gives us paths to where the market might be trying to go. Because again, the market is an auction process. It's trying to find value. It's trying to find balance. And when we get out of balance, it's seeking out the next level of liquidity of sellers or buyers. That's going to make more sense if you go to the playlist and watch the videos on auction process, on market profile. All of that's going to be in this playlist. But again, we didn't want to overwhelm you. And just wanted to give you guys a brief look at, this is one of my screens showing, again, the order flow that I'm looking at. And you can see it's a traditional footprint chart looking at different things, looking for exhaustion, looking for imbalance, things we're going to talk about in this playlist, so don't get overwhelmed. But I just wanted to give you an idea of what I'm looking at each day. So I want to thank you for watching this video, and please move on to the next video in this playlist on order flow. You can find me on all your social media platforms as Move Up with Mike. If you want to take your trading to the next level and you want to learn more about order flow, we can certainly get with you on a one-on-one basis and help you, again, deep dive into order flow and being able to read the numbers. Like I said before, when I first looked at it, it was just jibbly juke. And we can help you go from jibbly juke to actually mastering the bars. We are getting ready to set up a trading room, and we're going to actually do a pilot, and it's going to be free. The pilot is going to be free. We want people to come in, give us feedback before we go live. So if you want to be a part of our pilot program for our trading room, go right here and you can sign up, and you will get an email back when we actually take it live, probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks. And of course, what better way to start trading with other people's money? Follow this link here and you will be able to get funded, trade somebody else's money. That's one of the biggest hurdles most people have with trading, is that they don't have the money. Well, prove that you can trade with order flow, and there are companies out there that will fund your account. As I always say, it doesn't matter what system you have, what indicator you have, or if you're in the trading room. The most important thing is being able to pull the trigger. Trading is not about indicators. It's not about a system. Trading is about a mindset, and you have to have the right mindset to be a successful trader. Thanks, guys, and I will see you next time.